Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are tackling a massive, honestly pretty painful challenge for modern organizations, and that is the vast gap between theoretical data governance and actual, proven data accuracy. We're talking about making that jump from a nice policy document that's just gathering digital dust to having undeniable, measurable proof that your data is pristine.
So let's just dive right in by asking what is arguably the most critical question facing IT leaders, data stewards, and compliance officers right now. How do you actually prove your data policies are working in production? I mean, it's easy to write a rule, right? But it is an entirely different beast to prove it's actually being enforced every single minute of the day.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the data governance gap, making that shift from policy to proof and automating validation. Then we'll check out key enterprise use cases, and finally, how to measure your ROI. Let's get moving. Starting off with Section 1, the data governance gap. We really need to look at this vast canyon between your governance intent and your actual operational reality. Now, there is a super stark contrast here that we absolutely have to address. Data governance, well, that's about defining the rules, setting the standards, and, assigning ownership. We all know that part. But data validation is the act of proving those rules are actually being followed in practice. Most organizations are totally fine at defining the rules, but man, they struggle massively to actually prove them. And this struggle, it exists because of the data assembly line. Information doesn't just sit still, it flows. It moves from your source systems through these incredibly complex ETL pipelines into data warehouses, and then finally hits your BI reports. And at every single jump along the way, there is a huge risk of hidden defects and data drift just sneaking in completely undetected. Because think about it, without automated validation, you're going to run into some serious, keep you up at night kind of issues. Data definitions drift between systems. Critical fields literally just go blank. Transformations introduce hidden defects. And honestly, worst of all, your governance just stays entirely manual and reactive. You end up with broken dashboards and compliance auditors demanding evidence that you just simply don't have. Moving right along to Section 2, from policy to proof. Let's see exactly how we bridge this gap with measurable governance. So, what does measurable data governance actually mean in the real world? Well, it means actively measuring whether your governed data meets your defined standards. Basically, it's turning your governance into hard proof by validating whether the data is actually accurate, complete, and performing exactly as expected across your entire data ecosystem. I really love this distillation right here. Turning governance from policy into proof. That hits the nail on the head. This isn't about drafting some giant document that just sits on a virtual shelf. It's about moving way beyond manual checks and proving with actual operational evidence that your critical data is fully controlled. Which brings us to Section 3, automating data validation. This is where we finally get to solve the agonizing problem of those manual spreadsheet spot checks. All right, so to get that proof, you absolutely need execution, and Query Surge acts as the essential engine here, bringing that execution and evidence directly to your data governance. It's an enterprise-grade platform specifically designed to pull organizations out of just having good intentions and squarely into having measurable, automated proof. This platform completely shifts how your teams operate. It automatically compares source and target data to validate everything across systems. You can enforce your data quality rules at a massive scale. We're talking checking for completeness, nulls, referential integrity, the whole shebang. So instead of a random monthly spot check, you get continuous monitoring. It gives teams crystal clear visibility into exact defect locations, and crucially, it hands you the exact audit-ready evidence your compliance officers are always asking for. Okay, let's hit Section 4, key enterprise use cases. Let's ground this in reality and look at where this automation is actually applied in the wild. Now, this applies to several absolutely critical scenarios. We are looking at enterprise data governance for keeping standards consistent and regulatory reporting to guarantee your financial data is perfectly accurate before any disclosures. Actually, it's an absolute lifesaver for data migration, too. Just imagine trying to maintain your standards during a massive ERP cloud migration without automated validation. No way. And of course, it establishes deep trust in your BI and analytics. In all of these cases, automation is really the linchpin. Finally, we have arrived at Section 5, measuring your ROI. Because at the end of the day, if we can't actually quantify the success of these practices, what are we even doing? To prove value, you have got to track the right KPIs. You need to measure accuracy through hard accuracy rates. You measure completeness by identifying those sneaky nulls and missing fields. You validate consistency through strict rule pass rates, and you track the overall health of your system by monitoring exception trends over time. Look, if you aren't tracking these automatically, you really aren't truly measuring your governance.
And here is the ultimate payoff. By adopting this automated framework with Query Surge, the measurable ROI is just massive. You drastically reduce manual oversight and get to completely retire those super fragile spreadsheets. You improve trust across the entire business, ensure audit readiness, and catch defects early in the pipeline way before they break your downstream systems. Basically, you scale your governance effortlessly, no matter how ridiculously complex your architecture gets. To wrap up our explainer today, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Is your organization relying on blind trust when it comes to data controls? Or are you ready to explore solutions like Query Search and turn your governance policies into undeniable proof? If you want to stop constantly reacting to data defects and finally make your governance truly measurable, well, it's time to take action. Thank you so much for joining me, and keep questioning your data.